Okay, here's where we're going to be talking about the overall density curve. In the previous tutorial, if you've been following along in order, I touched on the color and density group, which is kind of right here. I like to separate all my color moves from my actual retouching moves for safety's sake and for workflow efficiency. So what I've got here is an image that's just about to begin retouching. And I've already put in my white check curve, my noise layer. I set up my color folder, made a copy of the background, and I made a blank, as you can see, retouching layer where I start my retouching, my cloning and my patching and what have you. The first thing I like to do before I start anything is to kind of see where the image is going to go visually. And by that I mean I like to set the overall density of the image, just to give the image its final look. Even though I may adjust it as time goes on, before I start working, I like to see where the image is going. Because right now, it's a lovely image and all color-wise, but it needs a little bit of weight. So I make a new curve, and I call this overall. That's for my purposes only. You can call it whatever you like. Now, if I come over here into my curves dialog window, I first start by hitting auto. And what it did is, if you'll notice, if we go to the individual channels, it actually took the lightest sections and the darkest sections and it compressed them to a nice dynamic range. The only problem is that in this situation with this image, especially it being beauty, I don't like it because it's too heavy. So I'm going to check all the individual channels. I option click on this little arrow and hold the option key. Now as I hold the option key and drag to the left and right, you'll see how the black starts to appear more. That's like the black limit. I'm increasing the amount of black that is in this specific image. So what I want to do is, without getting too technical, I want to move to the left to where I just don't see any more black. Or just about see it, which brings me right about there. Do the same thing in the grid channel. I hold down the option key, I click, and as I'm dragging, I'm holding the option key, and I'm looking for where the black just starts to disappear, and then release everything. Blue channel, I do the same thing. Right about there. Okay, now that's actually done a little bit better job. It's not as heavy as the original. But the other thing I like to do is look at the highlights. Okay, it looks like some of the highlights over here may have been clipped. So I'm going to put these back down to where they were before. The blue channel, by doing the same thing, holding down the option key and moving the slider to the right and to the left, you see where the image actually starts to clip in the highlights. Red channel, same thing, back to square one. All right. Now you have the midtones. The midtones seem a little bit heavy in here, so I'm going to bring them back to roughly where they were at the start before I hit the auto button. You don't have to hit the auto button. You can actually go in and do this manually from the beginning too, which is probably just as efficient. I'm just kind of giving you a brief overview of how I do things. Okay, and that's that. Here's an RGB channel, has not been affected. I went to the individual channels, not the main channel. Here's the original. And here's after I actually set the curve. It looks really nice. It's got some nice density to it, doesn't it? Well, you're not going to answer me because you're actually listening to the tutorial, so it's a rhetorical question. I may actually just go in here and add a little bit more of a yellow into this section by clicking in here. And let's put this back down a little bit. Add a little yellow because I like it warmer. And then maybe go up to the RGB channel and lift the whole image just a little bit and keep it there. Now mind you, I didn't commit this layer to my retouching. This is on a separate group. It's in my color group, and I can go back and alter this at any time that I want, whenever I want, for whatever reason. This just gives me a general idea as to where I think the image is going to go as far as a visual feel. And then I'll start my retouching and so on and so forth. So this is the first curve in a series of what could be up to 40 different color adjustment layers. And they all go above this: hue saturation, selected color, color balance, as I'm working on maybe changing the color of the nails with the hue saturation, or removing a yellow cast from the floor using something else, or maybe a density curve over here. And they'll all go right above this, and they'll all be in their own separate color folder so that they're not affecting my retouching. Again, really important to separate your color moves from your retouching. So that's how I start the image. From here I would start cloning, getting rid of their schmutz and fixing up the floor and going into deal with the skin. As I'll go into some of the skin studies later, you'll see how that works. And that's that. See you next tutorial.